Okay, so yeah, welcome to Let's Talk About 2020. I've been wanting to talk about 2020 for quite since last year, I could say. But the time just didn't come, and there was just so much going on. And then, you know, Corona happened. Um, and it kind of, at a certain point when we got to like January and then February, I was like, I missed my shot. It's too late. I can't start talking, can't start talking about it now, while it's already underway. But I think at this point, there's still stuff I wanted to talk about and say, especially after doing like so many client readings over the past couple months. I just really felt the need to share what's on my mind in terms of like these collective themes that I keep seeing in so many people's charts, my own life, out in the world, all the things. So thank you all for joining me. I'm super excited. And then I'll just off the bat say that the reason I wanted to do this was partly to talk about 2020 for sure. And the other part is to talk to you guys about my Patreon offering, which I don't know if I want to call it a Patreon offering actually, because it's more like a thing that I'm doing, and I'm using Patreon as like the method of doing it. But it's a bi-weekly meetup, a virtual meetup. We'll meet on Zoom like this and talk about astrology. And we'll vote. People will get to vote on the discussion topics. And it's bi-weekly because we'll do one meetup that's more like a workshop style, where we'll like really get into your charts and talk about. Tomorrow is our first meeting, so we're going to talk a lot about Venus retrograde, the nodes shifting, the eclipses that are coming up. We're really just going to dig into the astrology of May, into our personal charts and lives. And then 2 weeks after that, we'll do just like straight up Q&A. So like any questions you might have about astrology or even tarot or anything. So yeah, sorry, yeah, just try to keep yourself muted, guys. So yeah, that's Deep Seekers. I'm going to talk about it more at the end, but just to let you know, that's like when we were getting into this and we're even looking at some people's charts, because I did have a couple people submit charts for examples. You'll see that like it's hard to answer questions generally about people's charts. And so Deep Seekers is like a really good way to get, more access to me and going in depth as to like what's going on in your personal life. So with that being said, I'm going to get started. Let's see, share screen. Okay, let's talk about 2020. Actually, before I do that, I'm just gonna kind of go through, let's see where, okay, there it is. I'm just gonna kind of go through how we're gonna go through everything today, I guess. So first, I'm just gonna go over like my overall thoughts about 2020 and like the themes that I see happening throughout the year. And then I'm going to go super briefly through each month and just kind of detail the major themes of each month. Hopefully that won't take too long. And then I wanted to do a more detailed look at certain like quarters of the year. So, excuse me, what we're in right now, I'm calling like the April, May, June quarter. We'll talk about Saturn and Aquarius. We'll talk about the nodes shifting, which happens in like 7 hours. And then we'll look at some example charts as well. And we'll talk about Venus retrograde. And then we'll look at the next quarter, July, August, September. That's mostly categorized by Mars and Aries and Mars retrograde. And Mars's squares to Saturn, Uranus, and Pluto. Sorry, Saturn, Jupiter, and Pluto. Uranus is also going to station retrograde in August. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about October and November, which is, my notes I just wrote, not great. That's going to be the lead up to the election as well. So I'll briefly talk about the election day, and all that's happening on that day, just in particular. And then we'll talk about December 2020 as, a whole. So just to get started on my general themes, um, yeah, 2020. I mean, you guys have already experienced it, experienced what we're going through. Collectively, personally, it's a lot, and I certainly didn't expect this. I didn't expect a pandemic. I'm sure if I would have done, more research into past cycles, maybe I'm sure other people out there have, predicted this, but um, I think astrologers everywhere knew that 2020 was going to be a really big year, but for various reasons. But I don't think I didn't hear anyone predict exactly this. So it's a lot. But I found that again, a lot of the readings I've been doing have been about, slowing down, pausing. Like I see 2020, I've been saying this to a lot of people. If you had a reading for me in the past couple of months, you've heard me say this to you. Um, 2020 is just like this huge threshold that we just have to get through. I think Lisa Shine posted on Facebook the other day about how looking back at they her Lisa Shine and Chris Brennan do like a monthly meetup in Denver. They did a monthly meetup in Denver, Colorado. And I think she was talking about how they were talking about 2020 and what what they kind of came up with was like the best thing about 2020 is going to be like getting over it or like the end of it, and that's feels really true. It's a tough year. It's just we're in tough times, and of course it's going to be different for everyone in terms of how we experience it. But yeah, it's pretty rare to have three really big outer planet cycles all happen within the same calendar year. So in general, 2020, it's a threshold. I didn't see much kind of like happening this year in terms of people's personal lives, starting new ventures, embarking on new journeys. It really, time after time, looking at people's charts, it really looked like, okay, this is a year for integration. This is a year for like really getting your shit together. And, you know, we have so many retrogrades back to back that it's like really hard to look forward. There's also the fact that Jupiter is in fall, Jupiter is in Capricorn all year until December. Um, and that just adds this humongous weight to everything that's been happening in Capricorn over the past 2 years, especially most notably with Saturn in Capricorn. So yeah, let's see. Let me look at my million notes. Um, yeah, I'm gonna talk about where we all started, but major theme, major theme of the year is just like we got to get through it. We got to get through it. Um, and 2021 looks so different. Everything after December 21st, 2020 looks so different that like the way I look at it, and I think a lot of astrologers look at it, is this what's happening right now feels like, at least in terms of the pandemic, like it feels like a Capricorn thing. It feels like this Saturn and Capricorn manifestation, and I I do see at least things getting better in 2021. I don't think it's going to be better right away, but what we're experiencing right now feels very contained within this year, if that makes any sense. So starting with starting with January, I'll say, and I really can't start with January without really starting with December 26th, 2019. That was the Capricorn solar eclipse. And that seems to be when a lot of this like seed of the virus was really starting to manifest. Um, but with eclipses, when an eclipse happens, like one of the luminaries is literally eclipsed. So with the solar eclipse, it was the sun being eclipsed by the moon. And with that, you get something that's hidden. it's obscured from view. And so this virus was happening. People knew about it in China, at least, but the impact of it was completely hidden, and even, you know, the reporting on it was being hidden from the rest of the world. So that's really when the seed was planted. And of course, we've been having these eclipses over the past year and a half. Saturn's been in Capricorn since December 2017, and we've been having eclipses there, I guess, since mid 2018. But with Saturn getting closer and closer to Pluto, Jupiter entering Capricorn as well, and then also the South Node being there, just really everything was bubbling up. It was bubbling up. So January started with a bang. We immediately, January 10th, were thrown into a lunar eclipse in Cancer, Uranus stationed direct. So that really started off the year. And then we had Saturn Pluto conjunction 2 days later. So let me share my screen because I want to show you guys what that conjunction looked like. So, okay. So yeah, this is the chart for the Saturn Pluto conjunction. As you can see, there's a trillion planets in Capricorn. So I took out all the asteroids that I usually keep in here. I kept Chiron and I kept Ceres. Here's Capricorn up here in the 10th house. This is for my location outside of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. But yeah, you can see here Jupiter and Capricorn on the South Node. Capricorn is Jupiter's least favorite sign to be in. It's a place of its fall, so it's the place where it can do the least amount of Jupiterian good. So all year we have this like pretty depressed Jupiter that really can't give as much as it would necessarily like to. Jupiter is a greater benefic. It likes to give and to it's about abundance and bounty, and in Capricorn it's extremely limited. So that, plus the fact that it's on the South Node, makes its power even less. The South Node decreases whatever it touches. So you have a very weak Jupiter that's like unable to bonify, to bring good things to almost anything in the chart. So we have that. We have the Sun at 21 degrees. And then we have Ceres, Saturn, and Pluto all at 22 degrees. And Mercury at 23 degrees. So 5 planets. Ceres is pretty big. I think it's around the same size as Pluto, perhaps bigger, perhaps smaller, I forget. But it's a pretty big asteroid, to the point where it's listed in this ephemeris. So it's a big deal. And Ceres has to do with food. Ceres was the goddess of the harvest, and yeah, she has to do with our, like, how we nurture ourselves and how we nurture, you know, the planet, the world. But it really has to do with food. The root word of Ceres is like Cere, which is like the root word of cereal, grains, whatever. So automatically we know, like, we have food shortages right now, and that can also be categorized by Uranus and Taurus that had just stationed direct right before the Saturn Pluto conjunction. But yeah, this is really where it started, the Saturn Pluto pile up. Mercury was there as well. And so we have this extreme heaviness that was seeded at the beginning of this year. Let's see. So I'm gonna stop sharing. So yeah, January, it was rough. The thing about all these planets in Capricorn is a sign, well, no, I'll talk about Saturn. Saturn is a planet that that has to do with the structure of our lives and of the world. So if you think about Saturn, it's the farthest planet that we can see with the naked eye. Like you can see Saturn in New York City. I've done it plenty of times, but it is the farthest planet that we can see with the naked eye. And so it does represent this boundary this idea of limits. It's the planet itself is bound by rings, you know, it's enclosed, it is limited. And so yeah, Saturn ruling the sign of Capricorn and being in Capricorn, we have this extreme emphasis on the structures of our society and of our lives, of course. But we've had this with the eclipses there, and the eclipses being the South Node being in Capricorn all this time. We've had this glaring, like, the corruption has just been so in our faces. All the ways that the structures of society just aren't working anymore has been so blatant. And obviously, that started in 2016. Oh, it didn't start there, sorry. But the blatancy of it was like the way it's been thrown in our faces really started in 2016. And then, yeah, and then Saturn moved into Capricorn, and it's just been like just the corruption of all of our societal structures. And so, yeah, all this super heavy emphasis on the sign, you can just think of like all of these planets in this one part of the sky that has to do with our structures. Total tower moment, like the weight is too heavy. We like we can't support ourselves in this way anymore, in like a capitalist society where work means everything, where the stock market means everything. It's just not, it's not going to work. So that's been blatantly clear. And I guess in our lives personally, we've seen, you know, wherever Capricorn is in your chart, you can see where it's not, like, things, structures aren't working for you anymore in this part of your chart. And of course, we have the lucky people who've had their Saturn return happening over the past couple years, whose natal Saturn, well, I should say the ones who have been turning 30, the ones who were born in, you know, the late 80s, they have natal Saturn conjunct Neptune. So they already were born under these super uncertain circumstances where their Saturnian structure was completely, how should I say this? Dissolved. Like, things were dissolving around that time as well. The Berlin Wall fell. You know, obviously we have Uranus, it was in Neptune, sorry, Uranus was in Capricorn as well. Societies were falling then too. So 30 years later, during their Saturn return, they get this other form of that. So I'm not jealous of you guys, but I will say, you know, it's tough. It's been really tough for all the Saturn and Capricorns. So yeah, I kind of talked a lot about January, but that's really where all this was seated. February happened. We had Mercury retrograde in Pisces, and so Mercury in Pisces, Mercury in water signs is mute, and it's not communicating information in the ways that Mercury necessarily is used to, with like facts and figures and data and, you know, concrete evidence. Mercury in Pisces is like a Mercury in the middle of the sea, and you really can't hold on to facts and figures and datas when you're in the middle of the water, like when you're swimming in the middle of the ocean. So again, a lot of the information we were getting about the virus, no one really knew what to think of it. Mercury, I don't think it conjunct Neptune during the retrograde, but it was co-present with Neptune the whole time. So yeah, February went by, we still didn't really know. We heard about it, there was news about it, but like we didn't know what to make of it. By the way, that's when all of the cruise ships were being affected by the viruses too, and that's, you know, Mercury and Pisces, cruise ships, water, all that, transportation on water. So February happened, and then also Mars entered Capricorn. So that's really when things started to ramp up. Mars is a planet that has to do with action, initiation. It brings heat to whatever it touches. So we get Mars, but also in Capricorn, it's exalted. So it can kick ass in Capricorn. Mars can have an agenda, have a goal, have like a list of things to do, and has the stamina to conquer all of that. So Mars is super strong in Capricorn. It enters this pileup of, you know, all the planets, all the other planets that have been in Capricorn: Saturn, Pluto, South Node, Jupiter, and ramps everything up. And so that carries into March. And again, a tower moment. So March came, and also, sorry, Mars rules the tower in tarot. So it really just felt like as if the tower were this Saturnian structure. Mars really came and like burnt that shit down. And then, yeah, March came, Mercury stationed direct in Aquarius. So we have this moment of clarity. Holy shit, there's a virus that's just killing people and it's spreading rapidly. So that's when we finally were able to see what was happening. Right around the Mercury station, I think there was a Virgo full moon, Mercury stationed direct. Mercury was ruling that full moon. The sun conjunct Neptune. And there was mass hysteria around the world. And then, mind you, March, with Mars in Capricorn, Mars was has been, because still is, under the rulership of Saturn. So Saturn is still calling all the shots here. And it's a Saturn that's been like hanging out with Pluto, death, destruction. Yeah. So yeah, sorry, I just distracted myself. So yeah, we have this Saturn that just conjoined with Pluto for the first time in 36 years. So it has this whole it has this new way of being. Like Saturn had just gone through a lot, having to move through this conjunction with Pluto after kind of like inching around it for like the past year. Finally made this conjunction, and it's ruling over Mars and every other planet in Capricorn. So Mars, this planet that wants to like do stuff and make action, is still under the control of Saturn, the rule maker, the one who wants to keep a container and make boundaries around things. So yeah, this really ramped out when Mars entered Capricorn and started to make conjunctions with all of these planets in Capricorn. And then let's see. Yeah, and then Saturn finally leaves Capricorn and finally, you know, is able to have a breath of fresh air. So Mars entered Mars entered Aquarius. What day was it? I have to look at my ephemeris. It's right here. I should know this off the top of my head. Yeah, it was the 22nd, I think, at night. 22nd of March. And again, it was able to finally take a breath of fresh air. It's been in Capricorn since December 2017, so over 2 years. And in Aquarius, it's an air sign. It's less heavy, it's less dense, and it was finally able to just like not be packed into a small space with a million other huge planets. And so Saturn has been in Aquarius. Saturn's been in Aquarius since late March. It'll be there until the end of June, and I'm going to talk way more about Saturn and Aquarius. But that kind of, we got like 10 days of, okay, like we're inside, now what? But yeah, you couldn't get more clear Saturn and Aquarius message than social distancing. So that's when social distancing, that word, became a phrase that was known worldwide, right as Saturn was at like 29 degrees Capricorn, about to dip into Aquarius. And so let's talk about that, social distancing. The social part, Aquarius, right? Like that's it's an air sign. It's about being social. It's about connecting with people. All air signs. It's about connection. And with Aquarius, it's about these connections on a wide scale. Gemini being more about the connections you're making in your everyday life, with Libra being more about these one-on-one connections that we're making with people. And Aquarius definitely being more about the connections we make on a wider scale with the world at large. And so Sam Reynolds pointed out the internet is having its Saturn return with Saturn and Aquarius. Those of us born in 91, early 90s, we are the internet babies, and we're having our Saturn return right along with the internet. And so how fitting that how fitting that once Saturn re-enters Aquarius for the first time since the internet became like the World Wide Web, everyone is on it. We're relying on it more than ever before, because it's not literally our only way of communicating. Obviously, we have the phone and we can still write letters. The postal service still exists for now, but we're depending on it for education, our Jupiter things like education. Now that Jupiter is in fall and unable to provide for us in the ways that he did last year when Jupiter was in Sag and just like everyone was having a ball, the stock market was booming. Now we have to rely on our Saturn and Aquarius for that. So in our internet, for the ways that we socialize, like DJs are doing sets from home. I can count the million different ways that we're using the internet. You guys know because you're doing it too. but yeah, so social distancing, and the distancing part comes from Saturn. And if you think about it, like it's also very Aquarius, like give me some space, it's fixed air. Austin Coppock talked about Aquarius, I don't remember where or when, but talked about Aquarius being like the atmosphere. And so the atmosphere being fixed air, it's above everything else. And Aquarius energy is very much like that, like prefers to get a farther out view, a higher perspective on things, not be in the nitty gritty so much, and kind of taking yourself out of the emotional context of things, so that you're able to view things rationally, maybe even scientifically, to see the full context, the full picture. So yeah, I mean, it's interesting. It's called social distancing. Obviously, it makes sense. We need to distance ourselves from each other physically. It should be called like physical distancing because I've felt more connected to my friends probably more than I have in years in a lot of ways. And I think a lot of people are experiencing that. And if you're not, that's totally okay. If you're just like, I need to get away from everyone, period, do that. But I've found myself talking and like hanging out with friends more than I have in years now that this is underway. And thank you internet for that. So, and thank you Zoom, even though, well, we won't talk shit about Zoom on Zoom right now. Who knows who's listening? I'm joking. So yeah, March happened, Saturn Aquarius. April, we just got through April. April was really categorized by Mars. So Mars entered Aquarius at the very end of March and formed in alignment with Saturn on March 31st. That was a lot. I mean, to have Mars and Saturn co-present, like in the same sign with each other, we felt that it was really tense. Mars wants action, Mars wants to take initiative, and Saturn is literally like, stop, hold up, like pause. I'm calling the shots. It's happening under my time. Saturn is the lord of time, so really it's all about Saturn. And so when Mars entered, Mars is like, let's do this, like, cool, I'm in an air sign now, but wait, immediately hits the wall of Saturn. And so I know Kelly Surtees, maybe it was, I don't know, someone on the astrology podcast, either Kelly or Austin or even Chris, they've used this metaphor quite a few times in regards to Mars Saturn stuff, but it's almost like putting your foot on the brakes and what is it called, the other one, the brakes and the other one. Drew, help me out.
This is why you're wearing a Mercury talisman, right?
I know. The brake and the
Gas?
the gas, thank you.
Well, I mean, we have electric cars now, so maybe we should say the
Okay, but most of us aren't Tesla drivers.
accelerator.
The braking and the gas at the same time. So Mars wants to go. Saturn's like, again, like hold the fuck up. Like this is on my watch, on my time. So with that creates a ton of tension. And you know, Mars cleared Saturn, kept moving, but immediately went into a square with Uranus. And those are two fixed signs. That's a fixed square. So again, even more tension. And what did we get? We get massive protests all over the country because people are sick of the Saturnian limitations. And we can think of the Saturnian limitations as, you know, also like Saturn being representing our authority. Alex, can you mute, please?
Oh, sorry.
It's okay. I'm glad I was able to see that so quickly. So yeah, we get these protests, and while Mars is still under the rule of Saturn over the next next couple weeks, sorry, we'll definitely continue to see this, and I think we'll keep having protests all year, but I think it's really categorized by this like Mars need to like do your own thing and, you know, be your own person, and this overriding like rule of law, the man being like, no, you got to do what I say, and that tension that happens through that. So let's see, what else did I write about in April? Mars still under the rule of Saturn, yeah. And then yeah, Venus entered Gemini in April, and we were given a little bit of, I don't want to say relief, but something, I think I would even say distractions with Venus and Gemini, welcome distractions, in terms of like things to do other than obsess and be anxious about the pandemic. Things and people to talk to yeah, to keep us, I don't want to say entertained, and maybe in some cases, but yeah, Venus and Gemini really helped kind of lighten the mood in some ways. And so wherever Gemini is in your chart, you can see where there was a little bit of ease brought in. Yeah, I'll just say that. And now Venus is slowing down, is about to go retrograde, and we will talk about the retrograde. So let's see, what else did I say? Yeah, blah, blah, blah. Okay, Venus, Gemini, cool. So now here we are in May. It's May 4th. May the 4th be with you. And I don't even know why I said that. I like am not whatever that movie is fan, so I feel like a poser now, but I just know it's a thing. So yeah, tomorrow in about 7 hours, maybe even less than that, 6 hours, yeah, 7 hours, the nodes are going to shift, and I'm just going to run through like what's going on in this next week or so in May, next 10 days. So May, I've been looking at May for a while. I'm going to just like show you the ephemeris. I don't know if you can see. No, because I'm disappearing. Super Neptunian right now. But it's just kind of looks like those music things where you see the music going up and down. May is a weird month. I'll just let you know. It's a weird month. There's lots of shifts. There's lots of changes. Don't expect to do much in May, and not do as in like, you know, you're not going to be sitting there doing nothing, but don't expect things to kind of take off in May. Don't expect to be able to go outside like en masse. Don't expect that things will become much more clearer. I think they will in a lot of ways, but it's such a soupy month. There's so much happening that it's really, there's so many retrogrades. Okay, I'll just get into it. So we start with tomorrow morning around like 1:30 something Eastern. I'm sorry, I didn't look at the exact time. but the nodes are going to shift from Cancer and Capricorn to Gemini and Sagittarius. They haven't been here for about 8 years, 8 or 9 years. I forgot to look, but finally we're out of Cancer Capricorn nodal axis. We will have eclipses until in Cancer Capricorn until July, and then we're done until 2028. No more Cancer Capricorn eclipses after July 5th. Okay, so Tuesday 5/5 Cinco de Mayo, the node shift. Thursday, this Thursday, the 7th, Scorpio full moon. Monday, that's a week from today, Saturn's going to station retrograde and Mercury is going to enter Gemini. So that's Saturn just stopping in the sky, Mercury flying forward into Gemini. I'm really excited about Mercury and Gemini, and I'll talk about that. But then 2 days later, next Wednesday, the 13th, Mars is going to enter Pisces and Venus is going to station retrograde. So again, 2 shifts, 1 day. And then the next day, Thursday the 14th, Jupiter stations retrograde. So yeah, 10 days, 9 days, the 5th to the 14th. We have all these shifts and changes. And so first off, I just want to say, like, be super kind to yourself and to others during this time. And just, you know how retrogrades are. Like, you know how they are. Like, give yourself space. Give yourself space to feel what's happening and to just like kind of like wade in the water while these shifts occur all around you, because it might be a lot. It's going to feel like a kind of a whirlwind, and especially this week as we're building up to the Scorpio full moon, which inherently is going to be pretty emotional. And then we have Uranus involved and all, of course. So yeah, just give yourself space to feel what's happening before finding the need to like take action on anything. I will say I'm looking forward to Mars not being under the rule of Saturn. Saturn's still like has the final say in everything, because although Mars will be in Pisces, ruled by Jupiter's still being ruled by Saturn. So yeah, I'm looking forward to Mars just like not having to be co-present with Saturn. 2 malefics together for months is just a lot. And also this is like the last like Mars break we'll have for quite some time. And by that I mean until well into 2021. So yeah, I'm going to savor the more flowy Mars and a less rigid, angry Mars while Mars is in Pisces. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to Mercury in Gemini as well. And the Gemini new moon, which is, what is it, the 22nd? Super social. Mercury is going to conjunct Venus that day too in Gemini. So we get the sun, the moon, Mercury, Venus, all in Gemini, being ruled by this pretty strong Mercury in Gemini. That's the first weekend, or that's the weekend that NORWAC takes place. I don't know if anyone will be at the Northwest Astrological Association conference. I probably messed that up, but I think I did it right. Which obviously isn't happening in person anymore. It's usually in Seattle every May, at the end of May, but it's going to be virtual, and I'm really excited. A lot of my friends are speaking. So anyway, I expect that to be a really fun weekend, even like fun, you know, I'm trying to be mindful of the fact that like our normal fun isn't really happening, but it's going to be a great time to like connect with people. It's going to be really good. So like, just keep that in mind. Amongst all of this, amongst the shitstorm that is 2020, there are some like nice moments, and there is a lot that we can take from it. So May is a lot. All these retrogrades, I'm going to get into it more, but yeah, I'll get into it more. June's interesting. Someone asked me, sent me an email asking, like, are we going to get any breaks this year? It's really hard to say, honestly. I think our breaks are in like the little moments. But I will say that if, like, looking at this year, if anything, it looks like May at least will be slower, because of all these retrogrades. I think towards the end of May and yeah, like June. June is I'm hesitant to say June because there's going to be eclipses. Um, I want to say June would be like a little chiller, but there will be eclipses, and eclipses just ramp everything up and make you feel like you need to do all the things or else. I don't know what the else is, but that's how eclipses feel. So, so yeah, I want to say it's June, but and I also kind of want to say it's July, but yeah, June is eclipse month. So June 5th, we get our first eclipse in Sagittarius on the Sag Gemini axis. We get a Sag lunar eclipse. It's at 15 degrees Sagittarius, and yeah, that's gonna be the beginning of this new story that's starting for you around the houses that Sagittarius and Gemini are in your chart. So definitely pay attention to what comes up around that time, the themes that are showing up. And again, I'm gonna look at some charts with you guys. The people whose charts we're looking at have the nodes in Gemini and Sagittarius. So we'll get into that a little bit more. Um, let's see what else. So there's the Sag eclipse. And then on the 21st, there's a solar eclipse at 0 degrees Cancer. So that's the final eclipse in Cancer for 9 years. And it's at 0 degrees. It's like this, I don't, I think I'm looking forward to it because it feels fresh and clean for I think it's because at 0 degrees. It has that like new baby smell to it. But it is like this final period of this story that's been happening over the past year and a half in the Cancer part of our chart. So the thing is that we have 2 new moons in Cancer this year. One is this eclipse, and another one we're just gonna have a regular old new moon a month later in July. So yeah, I think I'm excited for this one. And I guess what I will say about these 2 Cancer lunations, and then there's a final Capricorn lunar eclipse in July. I think it's July 5th. So yeah, the day after Independence Day in the States. What I will say about these Cancer eclipses is, in terms of this nodal axis, the Cancer Capricorn axis, what's been overwhelmingly clear to me is that through all of the darkness and um, the feelings of doom and despair and just the intense heaviness that's been happening in the Capricorn parts of our lives, what's overwhelmingly clear is that the antidote to all of this is Cancer energy. That's where the North Node is. That's where we're being pulled collectively. And this double lunation in Cancer is just like uber emphasizing the need for care and the need to nurture and to caretake ourselves. And that's literally all we can do. It's not all we can do, but like that's what we need to do. That's the medicine in all of this is practicing care for yourself first and foremost, and for others, and like taking care of yourself so that you even know how much you can give for others to others. And that's really what the Cancer archetype is all about. It's about this caretaking, and especially in regards to our physical bodies. That's the moon rules our physical bodies. and obviously the moon rules Cancer, and so yeah, I think it's just asking us these lunations, like especially the solar eclipse. It's like, have you figured it out yet? Like, did you figure out what you need to take care of yourself? And if not, it's okay. But like, this is a kind of like a final reminder. Like, don't forget, don't forget that care is the medicine to all of this. Nurturing yourself is the medicine for all of this. And um, yeah, the astrologer Eugenia Kroc once at the very beginning of these Cancer Capricorn eclipses said that like the North Node in Cancer is about like grandmother medicine and um, kind of like being your own grandmother to yourself in a lot of ways, like holding yourself in the ways that you need. And I think that takes like sitting with yourself and figuring out what your needs are in the first place so that you can be there for yourself. And lastly, the tarot card, the Chariot, the Cancer card, um, the card ruled by Cancer, and how that card is so much about making sure you have what you need in your chariot, making sure your chariot is functional enough to take you to the next stage, the next journey. Um, and how the chariot is really like your body, like your physical body. And yeah, I don't know. Just thinking about these double Cancer lunations makes me think that like it's really this emphasis on taking care of yourself, taking care of your body. Like, what does your body need to function so that you can, ride through these next 8 years, um, before we have the South Node in Cancer in 2028. So so yeah, wow, 2028. I don't want to think about it. Okay, so yeah, that's my Cancer spiel. Um, and then yeah, we get to July. So, oh, sorry, I forgot to mention, um, Venus is going to be retrograde until the 25th of June, and then a week before that, on the 18th, Mercury stations retrograde in Cancer. So again, more emphasis on Cancer. Like, um, I really like Mercury in Cancer. It just, yeah, I'm not going to get into it anymore because we'll get more into it, but July comes, Venus stations at the end of June, so Venus is direct. Mercury is going to station direct in mid-July. And then, yeah, Saturn re-enters Capricorn July 1st. So we had this like experience in Aquarius for 3 months, a little over 3 months. I'm going to talk about it more, but Saturn's going to re-enter Capricorn and kind of like finish up. So it kind of like left Capricorn in a little bit of like I don't want to say haste, but it left knowing it was going to come back and like clean up its mess, you could say, or at least finish like, I like to think when I talk about Capricorn, or when I talk about Saturn, I like to do the metaphor of a house and like building a foundation of a house. So it's been in Capricorn for a couple years, like really figuring out the plan and how that house wants to be, how the house should be built, and really taking the time to build a solid foundation. And it's not quite there yet. But it had to go into Aquarius to kind of like see the big picture and kind of like clear its head a little bit, have a breath of fresh air, like I said. Took its time to do that, and now it's re-entering in July 1st, and it will be there till almost the end of December, and it's finishing up. So with that also comes Mars entering Aries, and so we get Mars in Aries I think at the very end of June, and Mars is going to be in Aries until the first week in January. So here we go, Mars in Aries, um, Saturn in Cap, and also of course we have Jupiter in Capricorn, and we still have Pluto there as well. So the beginning of the Mars square starts to build in July. And the Mars squaring Saturn and all the other Capricorn planets is going to be what categorizes the rest of the year. So it really does start at the beginning of July. It doesn't ramp up for a couple months, but just keeping that in mind. We get Mercury stationing direct on the 12th at 5 Cancer, not far from the eclipse degree. So might bring you some more clarity around that final Cancer eclipse. And then we have Venus moving direct in Gemini. So like Venus is like finishing up the mess, cleaning up the mess that she made in Gemini during her retrograde. And yeah, you'll have those final, if you have any planets in Gemini or any planets that are involved in this retrograde, maybe in other mutable signs, Venus will be making those final passes through those planets all throughout July. So really, again, wrapping up this Venus retrograde story that month. And then we get a Cancer new moon on the 20th at 26 Cancer. So that's kind of like a final, like I said, I talked about Cancer enough. I don't really have to go through that again. But yeah, and then we have our final Capricorn eclipse on the 5th, like I said. So that's July. Again, I feel like July is, out of all the months in the year, is kind of the one that we're going to finally be like, I think with Saturn re-entering Capricorn, there's going to be this big like urge to kind of just get back to normal. Like, can we just get out of our houses and get back to normal? I will just say that like, even if for somehow, some way it feels like we're through the worst of the virus at that point, things are going to ramp up in the fall. So July does seem like a time of being able to get some things done that we haven't been able to for so long because of what we've been going through. But it does, oh yeah, this is what I wrote about July. Lots of cardinal energy. So we get, the sun is going to be in Cancer for most of July. Mercury will be in Cancer all of July. Mars will be in Aries. And then we have Jupiter, Saturn, and Pluto in Capricorn. So almost all the planets are in cardinal signs. Everyone's going to be like, I'm fed up. I just got to do what I got to do. And so I think you will see a lot more people out and about. I think you will see people, and yourselves included most likely, like doing the things that they had to put off in March or February and March, finally starting those things. Some people might be starting new jobs that they got, months ago that weren't able to start yet, things like that. So I kind of see July, excuse me, July being like people just wanting to take action. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I think in a lot of ways, like you should, but just keep in mind that like we still have to get through the fall. And as much as it feels like things may start to feel like they're getting back to normal, we're not there yet. So August comes. I think August is probably going to feel like a really fast month. Mercury is going to zip through Leo and Virgo. We just have the sun in a fire sign. The sun in Leo, you got Mars in Aries. And again, Mercury is moving really, really fast. And then, excuse me, Venus will be in Cancer for most of the month. So that's kind of, I think Venus in Cancer is going to be the cooling balm that we need. So leaning heavily into that Venus, that Cancer energy in August, because everything else I think is just going to feel like we're just moving. This is very fiery and fast. Let's see, Venus in Cancer. Okay, so but August is when Mars starts to square the planets in Capricorn. So let's see, where do I start? So I'll start with August 4th. Mars is going to square Jupiter. The 13th, it's going to square Pluto. And then on the 15th, Uranus is going to station retrograde at 10 degrees Taurus. And then on the 24th, Mars squares Saturn. So that's the first opening square from when it had the conjunction with Saturn on March 31st. now it's finally at this 90-degree square angle to Saturn, and it will square Saturn again, and Jupiter and Pluto again, because it's going to stop and go retrograde. So this is just the lead up to what's going to be happening in the fall. So yeah, August is when things kind of start to ramp up. What else? What else? Oh yeah, and then the Uranus station. Uranus is going to be at 10 degrees Taurus starting in July. So almost all of July, all of August, and almost all of September, Uranus is just going to be at 10 Taurus. So if you have planets at 10 degrees fixed, so 10 degrees Taurus, around, between 9 and 11 degrees, Scorpio, Leo, Aquarius, you're going to feel that Uranus station. And yeah, it's just, I mean, I don't like the fact that that's fire season on the West Coast. It's like leading into that. And just because it's in Taurus, and Uranus and Taurus can often bring a lot of not just seismic activity, but like earthly activity, like things like volcanoes and earthquakes and all that stuff. So, and then the fact that there will be a bunch of planets in fire, well, not a bunch, but we'll have the sun in a fire sign, and Mars in a fire sign, and Mars is really, and Mercury for a good part of it, but Mars is really like out for trouble, really, super strong in Aries right now. So yeah, August seems like another month where things are just kind of ramping up. And then we get to September. I don't like September and October. Mars is going to station retrograde on the 9th at 28 degrees Aries. So again, if you have planets at 28 degrees cardinal, that's Aries, Cancer, Libra, or Capricorn, you'll feel that station. It's going to be at that degree for about a week, but it's moving pretty slowly all of September. It only goes from like 27 degrees to 28 degrees and then back to 25 degrees. So it's really slow. September also, a couple days later, let's see. Okay, so yeah, the 9th it stations retrograde. On the 12th, Jupiter is going to station direct at 14 Capricorn. Sorry, 17. I don't know why I said 14. For 17 Capricorn, Jupiter is at 17 Capricorn all of the month of September. So again, if you have planets at 17, around 17 of cardinal signs, you'll feel that Jupiter station. I know a couple of people have Jupiter at that degree of Capricorn, all of you Jupiter returners. And then Saturn is going to station direct at the end of the month, on the 29th. So this is like not great because Mars, so Saturn's going to station, and Mars is also like moving pretty slow, and they're just going to be squaring each other all month. So we have this really intense like tension between these two planets. We talked about them before, how Mars just wants to do things, and Saturn's like trying to just hold down the rule of law basically, and be like, these are the rules, these are the boundaries, like do not cross my boundaries, do not break my rules. And Mars is hell-bent on getting its way. So Mars is going to be running into these roadblocks with Saturn all fall. And yeah, I'll get more into that too, but I'll just say that, where are we? Okay. Mercury is going to move through squares to Mars in Capricorn. The Mars and Aries and all the planets in Capricorn from Libra. So Mercury is going to be moving through Libra for most of the month. It's going to be opposing Mars and then squaring all the planets in Capricorn. So Mercury ruling like our news and the information that we're sharing, and there's a really contentious relationship with these other planets, all in cardinal signs, that just want to like do and take action and go. And Yeah, that's the lead up to the election, September and October. So we can expect political news, especially, but we can expect the news to just get to be a lot, and just the discourse around everything. So if you're sensitive to that, I certainly am. Just keeping that in mind, that like you might want to seriously reduce the amount of time you're spending online or just talking about, politics and stuff, because it's not pretty. It's not going to be pretty. It's not going to be. I think Mercury is just going to want there to be some um, valuable discourse, and Mercury is really going to want, like, I can't imagine debates happening personally, but um, perhaps maybe later there's an online debate. I don't know, but I can just see like Mercury really running into a lot of roadblocks in terms of like getting out just fair messages, and having a lot of that, excuse me, be corrupted. So yeah, that's September. It's not cute. I'll just say that. October might be one of the worst months this year. It's a difficult month. So on the 4th, Pluto is going to station direct at 22 degrees Capricorn. Mind you, Pluto will be at 22 Capricorn starting in late August. It'll be there all of September, and it stations direct at the beginning of October, but it'll still be at 22 degrees all of October and almost all of November. So we have Pluto just hanging out at the degree that Saturn met Pluto at in December, or sorry, in January. And it's almost like when I think of Pluto, I think of like drilling. And so I just think of just this intense, like the word intense does not do it justice, but um, just heavy emphasis on that degree, which again was kind of like the seed of everything that we're going through right now. So yeah, Pluto just hanging out there doesn't feel great. And part of that is because Mars is gonna square that degree again. Um, Jupiter is coming close to that degree. It gets there in November. And let's see, October. The other thing is that Venus is going to be in Virgo all month. So where we've been able to lean on Venus in a variety of different ways, like throughout the year, when all this was happening in March, Venus was in Taurus, and at least we got, people started to bake, and we were we had a little bit of simple pleasures, mundane pleasures with Venus and Taurus. And again, like when Venus is in Cancer, I think that's going to provide a nice soothing balm to like the intense heat that we feel that month. We're not going to be able to lean on Venus in October. Venus is going to be in fall in Virgo, and she's just not going to be able to provide us with the Venusian, again, simple pleasures that we've been able to lean on this year. So that's not great. I mean, she will, at least Venus won't be in a terrible, like in any bad aspects with any planets. In Virgo, it's going to trine all the Capricorn planets. It's not going to be involved with Mars. So we have that at least. But again, in Virgo, it's more about like Venus in Virgo. It's in its fall because Venus is very much like a receiving energy. It likes to attract and receive love, and I mean also give love, but it's about like what I want, need. Whereas Venus in Virgo is so much more devoted to being of service to others. That's not a bad thing at all, but generally speaking, we need to like be able to take care of ourselves first, and again, we just won't have the simple pleasures that Venus usually affords us. And then eventually she's going to get into Libra, sign of her domicile, it's going to be squaring Mars. And so we're not going to be able to get the love from Venus that we might need this fall. So what else? Ceres is going to station direct in Aquarius. Again, I think that has to do with food supply. I'll just say what Aunt Ortley said on one of her weekly weathers recently. Stock up about 2 months of, or at least like know how you're going to get your food for like a good month and a half, 2 months around this Mars retrograde, because it doesn't look too good, guys. And just with Venus, with Ceres stationing, Uranus and Taurus stationing, just the the food stuff is just coming up a lot. And again, Ceres was a part of that Saturn Pluto conjunction. It was right there with them, and so these issues having to do with food supply, it's just going to continue to come up this fall. And that's not to scare anyone. It's just to, you know, to let you know what other people are saying, because I think it's important. And then Halloween comes and we get a super juicy Taurus full moon conjunct Uranus. Fun. We already had a new moon conjunct Uranus, what was it, a week or two ago, and now we get this super full moon on Halloween on a Saturday. So fun. We finally have Halloween on a Saturday, except it's during a pandemic and we can't do anything. And yeah, the full moon's conjunct Uranus. This is days before the election, mind you. So let's see. Yes. Oh, and of course, I forgot to mention this. Mercury is going to, well, let me rewind through October. So we get Pluto stationing on the 4th. Then we get Mars is going to square Pluto and Jupiter again. So again, ramping things up. Friday the 16th, we get a new moon in Libra. That's going to be square Saturn. So again, a hyper awareness of our limitations during this time. Then we're going to get Mercury station retrograde in Scorpio, and it's going to oppose almost the exact same degree that Uranus stationed. Uranus stations at 10, Mercury is going to station at 11, Scorpio, and then yeah, it's going to be opposing Uranus during the station in retrograde. Mind you, Joe Biden, the presumptive nominee, has a ton of Scorpio placements in the 12th house. He's a 12th house Scorpio stellium person. So I don't love, I mean, I'm not saying that I'm like gung-ho for Joe Biden at all, but I will say I definitely am not loving the idea of a second Trump term. And I just will say that this Mercury retrograde moving through Scorpio and through all of these 12th house placements of Biden sounds like, and also in the lead up to the election this whole month, sounds like a lot of stuff being uncovered from the dark, from the 12th house. Okay. So there's that. And then, yeah, a lot of hidden truths revealed. And then we have that full moon on Halloween. November, right off the bat, the 3rd, Mercury is going to station direct, square Saturn. Guess what else happens the 3rd? That's election day. So yes, Mercury stations direct in the middle of the day when everyone's supposed to be voting. And it's stations in Libra, squaring Saturn. This, I can't help but be reminded of Mercury stationing direct in Aquarius in March, because that was when we found out, that was after a full moon, right? A couple of days after a full moon. That's when we found out about how bad the virus was and how bad the virus was spreading. And that's when that's when we finally got that clarity around it. Feels like a very similar situation with Mercury leaving a water sign where it's mute, re-entering an air sign where it has some dignity, and it can at least like get the words out. the day of this election, and again, it's just like finally able to reveal something to us. And then it goes back through the water sign to like wrap up and kind of just like, yeah, finish up the journey. So I just, yeah, that's what that reminded me of, revealing what was hidden and then reemerging. So yeah, Tuesday the 3rd is when the station happens, slash when the election is supposed to happen. Excuse me. Tuesday the 10th, a week later, is when Mercury re-enters Scorpio. And then the 14th, 4 days later, is when Mars stations direct at 15 degrees Aries. I don't love that Mars is also stationing during the election or when the election is supposed to take place. And yeah, but so it looks like November. I mean, I can tell you one thing. If we're supposed to have, if the election's going to happen, it doesn't look like we'll have any real clarity that day around like what's going to happen, because with Mercury stationing and then re-entering Scorpio right around the same time that Mars stations, which rules Scorpio, it just feels like it's going to take a little while for like the results to be finalized, at least. Yeah, and Venus is in Libra for most of the month. But again, it's in this square with Mars and all the Capricorn planets. It just, she can't really do much, but yeah. And then December rolls along and everything changes. So December, it's very similar to November. Things feel like they're moving forward. It's really hard to talk about December because October and November feel so important, and it's like hard to say. It's hard to say what's gonna go down in December after all of that. But I will say we finally get a collective breath of fresh air with the winter solstice. When the sun enters Capricorn, it's also a cazimi, meaning the sun. It's a Mercury cazimi, so the sun and Mercury form an alignment. They both move into Capricorn together, ushering in the winter solstice. And what else happens that day? I'm going to share my screen again because I have the chart. So share please. Okay. So Saturn, Pluto, present. Jupiter, Saturn. So Jupiter and Saturn meet up on the 21st. You can see the sun is there in Capricorn. That's the solstice when the sun enters Capricorn. Mercury has just passed over the sun, and we get Jupiter and Saturn forming an alignment at 0 degrees Aquarius. And this is the beginning of a new world, truly. This conjunction only happens every, I think, 36 to 40 years. But this is the first one in an air sign. It's not the first one in an air sign in 200 years, but it's the first one that begins a cycle of Jupiter and Saturn conjunctions in an air sign for 200 years. So for 200 years, whenever Jupiter and Saturn aligns, they were in earth signs. My father was born during one in Taurus. They've happened, and I'm losing my words again. They've happened in earth signs basically for the past 200 years. And so many astrologers have talked about this new era that we're entering, where the Jupiter-Saturn conjunctions are going to happen in air signs. And what that means for us globally, they recommend the talks. Austin Coppock has a talk on his website. Kelly Surtees has a talk. And there's plenty of astrologers that have been talking about this, and basically how it's just really ushering in a whole new era, where things will be more airy. They'll be less dense, less less solid. This is going to be the beginning of, well, I'll say this is going to be the end of things like paper money, or physical money. This is going to be the true beginning of things like cyber warfare, things happening less so on a physical material plane and way more in a mental, non-material plane. So this is the beginning. And I will just say that, like, we had Saturn and Mars conjoining at the same degree earlier in March, at the end of March, early April, and that was we had two malefics together at this degree, and that was really able to show us like a little glimpse into the future in a way that's like, this is how bad it could be. And I think a lot of us went there in our minds, how bad it could get, and the fear and the anxiety that comes from that. And I think that was important for us to know, like, what we need to do now, so that when this new era does arrive, that we're leaning more into Jupiter ideals instead of Martian ideals. So what we can do for the betterment of all, and not just fighting for the sake of fighting, or like, what are we actually fighting for? I guess that's a better way of looking at it. And I think that's what the Mars retrograde is going to be about. Like, what are we actually fighting for? Our personal freedoms, yes, but at the expense of what? I will leave it at that. So, like I expected, for our hour and a half in, because I'm just really bad at keeping things succinct. I'm a detrimented Mercury. I talk a lot, but I do want to get to some of these charts. So let's see, what will I do? I'm going to start with just talking more about Saturn and Aquarius real quick, and then we're going to look at the nodal shifts and the eclipses coming up in the Venus retrograde. But I just want to say, if you do have to leave, this is all recorded, and I'm going to post it online, and I'm going to send it to you first. Like, you guys will all get it first. So if you miss anything and you have to leave, like, no sweat at all. It'll be sent to you, and then it'll be on YouTube at some point. So just wanted to say that. So let's talk about Saturn in Capricorn and Aquarius. Saturn rules both signs. In Capricorn, obviously, it's denser, it's Earth, it's an Earth sign, and it's way more about the actual, not even just physical, but like the structures of our material world. It's about building things that last. It's about building structures for society in a lot of ways. And that's things like governmental structures, actual physical structures. Again, last time Saturn was in Capricorn, with Uranus and Neptune, we got literal destruction of physical structures, like the Berlin Wall, for instance. Saturn in Capricorn is so dense in that way, whereas Saturn in Aquarius is less dense. It's an air sign, and it's Saturn in a diurnal rulership, meaning it's daytime rulership. It's a little lighter. It's less heavy in Aquarius in a lot of ways. In Saturn, I think, I'll talk about Altair for a sec. So Saturn, Aquarius, I'll say that Aquarius is a sign ruled by Saturn, and again, I'll kind of paraphrase Austin Coppock here. We were talking about Saturn ruling both Aquarius and Capricorn. The best way to think about it is that Saturn kind of represents the wall. Saturn is that structure, that border, that boundary. Capricorn is what's inside of the wall. That's like society at large. That's the traditions that we uphold. That's the bureaucracies and the, again, like the actual physical material things that make up society. Aquarius is everything outside of the wall. It's what's um not doesn't necessarily fit in often in society, and it's what oftentimes lies on the margins of society. And I think that's where Aquarian people, um, their gifts tend to be that can see they can see society at large, because they tend to be ones that reside in the margins, or at least they might identify with the margins in, you know, whatever way. And they talk to people. They get um, they get a sense of what's going on in all aspects of society, and they are super um, they're super into understanding the systems that society works within, so that they can help upgrade them and make them better for everyone. So I'll talk about the fact that Saturn currently is at 1 degree Aquarius, and that's where it's going to station. It's going to station at 1 degree and 57 minutes Aquarius, so almost 2 degrees Aquarius, almost there. But that's where a fixed star called Altair hangs out. The fixed stars are the stars that make up the constellations. And so there's a star called Altair. It's in the constellation Aquila, I think it's Aquila, which is an eagle. And Altair is a star having to do with seeing things from, like, in a very Aquarian way, this perspective, this high up perspective, where you can kind of look into the future almost. It's very like imaginative, like um, thinking about society in a way that almost like almost utopian, in a way that, like, how can we fix this for everyone? Like, how can we upgrade this? How can we get into the system and change things so that that it can benefit more people and hopefully benefit everyone? And so with Saturn being here and like hanging out on this fixed star for months, and then eventually Jupiter and Saturn moving onto this fixed star together, I think we're all of us collectively have been able to, like, kind of like zoom out and look at what's happening in the world, especially in, you know, Western society, um, which is inevitably like affecting everyone. But and be like, okay, like, cool, blatant corruption, like everything looks terrible, but what are we going to do about it? And how can we take what's happening now and use this to craft and create a better world for everyone? And I think that's what Saturn on Altair is really asking of us, like, especially it's getting to this like point, stopping there for a month, you know, and then moving back to like to really like get back into the Capricorn structure and like figure it out. But this moment, these months, April, May, June, were really pulled out in order to like look in really and make some changes, hopefully, or at least think about the changes that we need to make and start to figure out how to change these systems. um and so yeah, that's important to keep in mind. I think especially those of us with Saturn and Aquarius this time meaning like these months, April, May, and June, um, are super important because we're getting like the download as to what our mission is going to be over the next 3 years. And by our mission, meaning like, you know, Saturn returns are a real thing. And yes, everyone, you know, everyone that gets to this age goes through it. But for Saturn and Aquarius people in particular, it's like, what um, what are you going to do? What ideas are you going to come up with that help the world. And you don't have, like, obviously not every single person with Saturn and Aquarius is going to have an idea that change. I mean, yeah, I don't think every single person is going to have an idea that changes the world, but what's the idea that's going to change your world or the communities that you're involved in? I think another theme of Saturn and Aquarius is like, where do I belong? Like, where do I fit in? With Aquarius being so group and community oriented, I think us, especially with Saturn and Aquarius, or even those of us with Aquarius placements that will inevitably get a Saturn transit and a Jupiter transit in the next year, or the next couple years, like, how are you using your Aquarian energy, which is there to help you find your people so that you can put your brains together and create something from that. Yeah, I hope that's making sense. I'm just kind of riffing. um, but so that's my spiel on Saturn and Aquarius. And I'll just say quickly for any Saturn and Capricorn people out there, apologies if you hear my dog barking. I don't know if you can hear it, but the Saturn and Cap people, like, you, first of all, congratulations, you're almost done. You guys have been killing it. Okay, it's been really difficult. I know it's been so hard. But for you guys, it's, you've been really, the Saturn return's been about, like, okay, so what can I build that's going to last? What can I build that's going to, like, what kind of structures can I build and create in my life that's going to last me the next 30 years? And that's kind of like a Saturn return thing for everyone. But I think with Saturn and Cap people, there's been just like this need for achievement, like to actually see it. like it needs to be physical in a way, not necessarily like actually physical, but like I think there's this need to like achieve something. And you're almost there. We have July through December to really like put the final nails in that coffin. But you made it. You're here already. You're here, and you made it so far. And I think that by the time December 2020 comes around, we'll be able to take a breath of fresh air and a huge sigh of relief that you did what you could. And it's probably going to be way better than you thought you were going to be at that time. And yeah, like, we need a Saturn and Aquarius people, for one, I think, appreciate, maybe I hope some of us feel this way, that we appreciate the foundation that the Saturn and Caps have laid out. And I think we see how hard it's been for you guys. And I mean, think about where you were 3 years ago and how much you've grown and changed since then, and how much you just like been through, and how much stronger you are now. Whew, okay, I'm gonna stop riffing. I feel like I could say more, but it's not coming to me, unfortunately. So I'm sorry if I didn't do the Saturn in Caps justice. But I wanted to quickly, let's see. I wanted to talk about, I'm going to do some charts. So I had 2 people submit charts. Let's see. Oops. So I had 2 people submit charts and asking about the nodal reversal, or sorry, the nodes changing signs. And one of them is having a nodal reversal and one of them is having a nodal return with the sign change. So I wanted to talk about nodal people who have like the nodes in these signs, but also people who just like have prominent placements in Gemini and Sag. So yeah, like I said, tomorrow they change. They'll be there for a year and a half. The nodes always take about a year and a half to move through their signs. I don't know why I'm doing that. But let's see. So Okay, so we have Amanda here. Um, and you can see they have North Node in Sagittarius on the ascendant, South Node in Gemini on the descendant. And they're going to be going through their nodal reversal. And then Kirsten has the North Node in Gemini, South Node in Sag. Okay, let's see. How should I talk about this? Well, I'll start with just talking about the nodes changing signs. So the way I work with the nodes, North Node being, well, I guess I'll say like where the North Node touches, when it enters a sign, that's when we're being called to increase in that area of life. And when it's where the South Node is, we're kind of being called to decrease. And so increase meaning like cultivate, like move towards, put more emphasis on building, I guess, in that area of life. Whereas a South Node would be more like releasing, clearing out, letting go. And of course, these the nodes are often referred to as the nodes of fate or the karmic nodes or like the destiny line. All these words that show that they are important. They relate to our destiny and our karma in this life, whatever whatever you want to call it. I think they're definitely very faded points. And so when you have nodal activity, well, first of all, that's where the eclipses occur. So where the nodes are going to be, that's where we're going to have eclipses for that period of time, a year and a half. And that means that like, excuse me, like this person, Amanda, was born shortly before eclipses started to happen in Gemini. As you can see, their sun is in late Taurus, and the moon's in Aries, so there probably would have been a Taurus new moon around that time, but like a couple of days, I don't know. I can't do the math in my head, I guess, right now, not on camera. But regardless, that's where your natal eclipse cycle is going to be. So like I was born during the Capricorn Cancer eclipse cycle. I was born in November, but in December or maybe even late November, or no, that wouldn't have made sense. In December, there would have been eclipses in Capricorn and Cancer. And so therefore like the Capricorn Cancer eclipse cycle affects me that much more because that's my natal cycles. That's where my nodes are. Um, so yeah, collectively we're going to be pulled towards more Gemini stuff and releasing in the Sagittarius stuff. But what does that mean? Well, let's see. I'm going to do it by looking at this chart. So this person was born with the nodes on their ascendant descendant line, meaning that like in this lifetime, relationships and the development of self are where a lot of like fated occurrences are going to happen. That's where their soul in this lifetime, that's where a lot of like the stuff is being, like the karmic stuff is being played out. So again, I would look at this chart. I'm pretty sure I gave this person a reading before, but I would look at this chart and be like, all right, so perhaps in past lives or in early life, you've done a lot of work. Your soul has been, it's used to developing relationships with other people. I'm looking at the South Node in Gemini in the seventh house, conjunct the descendant. This person has likely spent lifetimes, or at least recent lifetimes. If you don't want to look at it in a reincarnation context, that's totally fine. But there's patterning. I'll say that there's patterning around forming relationships with other people. And I would look at this and be like, okay, your soul's comfortable with that. It's been there, done that. What's uncomfortable, what's not as easy, what doesn't come as intuitively is how to develop the self, how to bring that energy back towards yourself and develop your own personality, relationship with the body, things like that. So that's kind of where this person's patterning exists around like perhaps giving a lot to other people or within relationships, perhaps losing themselves in relationships easily and having a harder time bringing that energy back towards them, which is like the North Node where your soul is just not what it's moving towards in this lifetime. Yeah. Okay. Let me catch my breath. Okay. So yeah, this person's about to enter their nodal reversal, whereas Kirsten is about to enter the nodal return. Their natal nodes are in North Node in Gemini, South Node in Sag, and in these houses, we're looking at, okay, so this is someone who's been part of community, part of the team, has done a lot of work or has a lot of patterning around creating for or maybe not creating, what's the word I'm looking for, like putting a lot of energy into taking care, maybe not taking care of, but developing, cultivating things within a group or community setting. So there's lots of stuff in the 11th house, as you can see. The midheavens in the 11th, you got Mercury conjunct the midheaven. Very community oriented person, someone that cares deeply about, again, cultivating community and connections with like-minded people. Whereas the North Node in the 5th probably has a harder time cultivating that for themselves, like being creative just for the sake of being creative, being finding joy and pleasure in life just for themselves and not for the end goal of sharing it with the community or helping community with it. So, and then we can look at like the moon here squaring the nodes. That definitely adds another layer to it. Jupiter here on the South Node certainly adds another layer to it, but I won't get too into it. I will say nodal reversal, nodal return, which happens every 9.5 years. So yeah, like when you're 18, you get your nodal return, and then again 18 years, so around 30, 35, you get your nodal return again. So it's like every 18.5 years you get a return, but every like 9.5 years you get the reversal, if that makes sense. So yeah, looking at Amanda's chart and the reversal about to happen, I will say I just recently went through my nodal reversal, and it's such an intense thing that people just don't talk about enough in astrology. It's an intense time, the returns and the reversals, because you're really being pulled towards I'm like trying not to sound too woo woo here, but whatever, I'm just gonna say it how I feel it. You're really being pulled towards your fate and your karma, or your destiny, whatever word you want to use. Yeah, it happens when you turn 27. It's like between your 27th and 28th year, you get the reversal, and you're basically faced with the decisions that you've made throughout the past how many years? 9 years. And you're starting to ask yourself, like, is this the direction I want to continue to go in? Is this working for me? And despite like maybe all the sacrifices you've made to get to this point, all the relationships you've formed, especially with this first house, seventh house thing, all the people that you've brought into your life that over the past 9 years, like, okay, that's completely valid. They mean something. It's important, but like the nodal reversal happens, and you're like really faced with the question, like, can you go on this way? Is this going to continue to carry you throughout the next 9 years? Like, are these patterns working for you? And I mean, usually the answer is no. And so you're tasked with figuring out, what to do from that, what to do with that. So A similar thing with the return. Um, you made the pivot 9 years ago, and yeah, that's the thing about the reversal. Sorry to go back and forth, but the reversal is very much a pivot. Like you get into this point where you're just like, I can't do it like this anymore. I have to pivot, and that usually coincides with the fourth house perfection year, and also it coincides with the progressed lunar return. And so, without getting too much into it, I'll just say that oftentimes when people are 27, sometimes 26, sometimes 28, because the IC can be in the third house or the fifth house too. So between the ages of 26 and 28, that tends to kind of get started at 27. People very often move home. I'm home right now with my parents. Um, and it's not always about moving home, but it is about this need to reroot yourself and reground yourself. And like, if you're looking at the fourth house, is the bottom of the chart. It's the root. It's the foundation of the whole chart. And so when you get into this fourth house year, which is what happens when you turn 27, you are called towards. You're just pulled. You're pulled towards home and like coming back to the basics, coming back to your foundation. And you need to do that in order to figure out how to pivot. Like it's really hard to pivot when you're just like constantly going, constantly moving in one direction. I think the eclipses that happen around your reversal really put things in perspective and makes you realize like what you need in order to move forward. And oftentimes that means, again, like this return, progressed lunar return. It's just like you're returning home, literally. I call 27 the homecoming year. So maybe you're at this point when you're in your mid 30s and you're having your nodal return. And this coincides with the 12th house year, of course. um, and it's a similar like, okay, like I made that pivot 9 years ago, and now I'm being usually the return kind of coincides with this like pull toward, I get another pull towards like a destined theme. So you kind of feel, it's a very visceral feeling, like this nodal, when eclipses happens, when you're having these like nodal activity, if you feel it and you can't, it's hard to deny. You can deny it, sure, but it's really hard to deny it within you. You feel this pull towards something. Sometimes it's you're returning to something that, maybe 19 years earlier you had interest in, and now 19 years earlier, that's like when you were 19, you were 18, 19, usually just leaving the home and going off to college or whatever. So now here you are at 35, 36, and you're remembering a lot of things that used to, especially for this person, bring them joy, bring them pleasure, things that might spur their creativity, fifth house stuff. But yeah, it's like another pivot, but it's less disruptive than the return, or sorry, than the reversal is. The return, it really does feel like a return in a lot of ways, like returning back to this calling that you've always had. And just another opportunity to really integrate this nodal axis, integrate the things, the south node, this moon square, that just feel right. It feels purposeful. It feels like your soul wants to develop more in this area of life. Whew, I lose my breath. Like it's so easily. And then yeah, this person Amber sent their chart in, and another like we got this Gemini Sag thing going on in the 1st and 7th. And Amber, I don't know if you're on here, but just so you know, there's going to be a lunar eclipse right on top of your sun on June 5th. So that's definitely a major, I would say, blowing you open in a lot of ways, where you're just like, you won't feel it right away probably, just because eclipses kind of sometimes take a little bit to kick in. So like a month or two after this, you'll probably notice it. But with the sun, with this happening on top of their sun, ruling their IC, you can expect perhaps something having to do with a move, um, or just like, yeah, I would expect a move or something having to do with home or family. Um, let's see. So, where are the notes? Okay. Um, so yeah, that's kind of about the nodes. And again, we're all going to have this story. I think in general, when we're talking about like North Node and Gemini, it's like we're cultivating more curiosity in our everyday lives. We're cultivating um, a need for options, choices, um, and then just more like raw data, more facts and figures, more information. Um, and the curiosity comes with that, like just wanting to learn more, wanting to buy more books or take more classes, um and just gain more knowledge, because Gemini is about those like everyday things that we gather, just like in our like the information that we gather in our everyday lives. Whereas Sagittarius is more about how we integrate that information into a wider belief system, how we integrate that into how we view the world around us, or literally our worldview. Sagittarius is higher education, whereas Gemini would be primary education. Sagittarius is where we take it to the next level, and again, it's about how these little everyday interactions that we have, the information that we're gathering just by living our lives, how that feeds into a larger worldview. And so we can definitely expect with like eclipses here. And by the way, this is where number 45's natal eclipses are too. He has the sun. I don't know why. He has the sun on the north node in Gemini and conjunct Uranus, and he has the moon on the south node in Sagittarius. And is it conjunct something? I don't think so. But so yeah, this is his natal eclipse cycle. He's going through he's going to start having his nodal reversal, and these eclipses are 100% affecting him. He's an eclipse. He's a lunar eclipse person. He's an eclipser. So not to bring down the vibe any more than it probably already is, but just had to mention that. Lots of activity with him in his chart too. So um, so yeah, we'll be kind of doing a lot more of a breakdown in the Sagittarius parts of our lives. I think we're already starting to see the breakdown of educational institutions, and how it's shifting, and the ways that education is shifting because of the virus, and because in person educating isn't happening, and like what that means for colleges especially, um and just how we're shifting the ways that we learn, and that we like take in this information. I think we'll start to definitely see a rise in cult activity, and other extremist beliefs, groups. um yeah, and hopefully maybe I don't know what that's going to lead to. I haven't developed that thought too much, but just thinking about, yeah, extremist religious groups as well. So there's that. To quickly talk about the Venus retrograde, I mean, um, I'll use Amanda's chart as wait, yeah, oops. Okay, I'll use Amanda's chart. So yeah, Venus retrograde. Um, Venus retrograde, it's not like Mercury. Like the other planet, like Mercury retrograde, it's its own thing. Venus and Mars retrogrades, they're not following like a similar, it's not the same sort of like patterning, especially because they last a lot longer. So Venus retrograde is really about how we are cultivating pleasure in our lives, and how I I really like thinking of the retrograde as like Venus kind of like pivoting and kind of like coming, like it's internalizing more. It's coming closer to you. It's coming closer to the sun. Um, and it wants a better, more proper integration into your life. So we're given this opportunity, this like month and a half period of like really being able to sit with Venus in a more intimate way in the area of our lives that Gemini is in, like in our chart. So with this person, Amanda, seventh house, we already know this is a relationship year for Amanda in one way or another. And what we can do with this is we look at the houses that Venus rules in the chart. So what house is Taurus? What house is Taurus in your chart, and what house is uh, Libra in? In Amanda's chart, Venus rules her sixth house and her 11th house. So Venus is therefore bringing the topics associated with those two houses into the house that Gemini occupies. So we get this blending of 11th house stuff, which is again friendships, groups. It's even 11th house is even like your online community, or just any sort of communities that you're involved with, alliances, that type of thing. Bringing that, it's also bringing in stuff about work, perhaps even like health and wellness. Um, Tying those two things in and bringing it to the seventh house of partnerships, relationships, and it's hanging out there for 4 months. And so you could guess maybe there's something to do. Well, first of all, Venus slowing down and going retrograde. These two houses are also like the topics associated with that are also going retrograde. They're also slowing down, and they're up for review. So, and then that review is kind of happening in the seventh house area of partnerships and relationships. So you can expect that like has something to do with, it's likely that Amanda is talking to a lot of friends that are people from their lives, that from their past maybe, that they haven't seen for a while, and having probably a lot more one-on-one connections with people from her community. From their community. And then same with work, perhaps something happens with work where work slows down a bit, or there might just be like a particular project that takes a couple months to complete or to work on. There has to be like extra levels of it, extra emphasis on it. Yeah, and perhaps they're working one-on-one with someone in that way. Perhaps there's a friend that they have a crush on, that there's some sort of love interest, or maybe a coworker that they have a love interest in, that they have more one-on-one time with. So just looking at it that way, that's I think the best way to kind of like take into account like what's going on with this Venus retrograde. It is, what was I about to say? Oh, I was just going to say, you probably already know what Venus retrograde is about. Like, it's probably pretty apparent to you, where, especially when we're looking at like the house that Venus is in, the Gemini house in your chart, what's been coming up for you around those topics and themes. It might not be super obvious, but if you're looking at the houses that Venus rules, that will probably make it a little bit more obvious to you. So like for me, it's Gemini's my fourth house, and Venus rules my third house and my eighth house. And I mean, I definitely have a lot of eighth house stuff happening. Finally about to finish my taxes, hopefully this week. That's one thing, because Venus rules my eighth, which is taxes. So that's a big thing for me, is like getting this tax thing finished. Boring, I know. Also a lot of like eighth house sort of relationships. So my eighth house is Libra. I've had a lot of people, Libras from my past, come up around this time. If you follow me on Twitter, you might see me tweeting about it. But yeah, Libras and people that have Libra placements, from my past and just like been talking. Like that's the thing. This is in Gemini. There's a lot of talking happening. There's a lot of communication. There's a lot of like banter happening. Maybe even a little flirting. Probably not as much of these like deep, intense, truth-telling combos. Perhaps those are going to start happening this week with the lead up to the Scorpio full moon, which is going to reveal a lot. God, Scorpio full moon. I'm saying that as a Scorpio too. It's bound to be pretty emotional, but yeah. So it's a lot of like Gemini is very surface level. So it's just like people popping in, lots of swiping happening. I'm sure all that. And yeah, and I think the condition of your natal Venus will also tell you how how this is going to play out for you. So someone like Amanda, who has Venus in detriment, although in the house of its joy in a night chart, so still kind of strong, that will, like, the nature of their Venus, which is a pretty like, let's see, it's a morning star Venus, it's in Aries, it's a bold Venus. Like this Amanda person probably has no problem letting people know what what they want, especially in terms of their like fifth house pleasure, desires, that sort of thing. So the way that they experience this Venus retrograde might be different from someone that perhaps has Venus in Libra, like I do, or even like Venus in Capricorn, where it might be a little bit more reserved. Yeah. So just saying, like, there's a lot of factors that go into how that retrograde, how any retrograde might affect you. And yeah, I'm in Deep Seekers in this monthly bi-weekly meetup thing that I'm doing that starts tomorrow. We're gonna go into everyone's charts and really look at how this Venus retrograde is going to affect you. So we'll talk about it, we'll chat about it as a group, and really get to the bottom of it and like be able to share what's actually happening. So yeah, that's Venus retrograde. Let's see. What else is happening? I'm gonna stop sharing for a second. Zoom is just so weird. Like, it's just, I'm not gonna get into it again. I'm not gonna start trashing Zoom. Let's see. So yeah, that's kind of like April, May, June is really categorized by this Saturn and Aquarius time with this Venus retrograde. There's like this emphasis on air. There's lots of air sign activity happening. I just think it's we're really like, I think we're going to be inside still for most of this time. So it's really like about this discourse that's happening, and it's just very like mental. There's a lot of like conversations. There's a lot of mental activity happening because like that's all we can do really. Whereas when we get to July, August, September, and it starts to get really hot, both figuratively, and I'm not going to even try to be smart and use those words right now. It's going to be really hot outside and like just in the world in terms of the energy, because we'll have the Mars and Aries squaring all the Capricorn stuff. Yeah, that's really July, August, September is really categorized by Mars and then this Uranus station. So when it comes to Mars retrograde, what I will say is, one, if you're born during a Mars retrograde, this time will probably be more productive for you. You probably won't experience the fatigue and the lack of energy that a lot of people will experience. So I just want to put that out there, that Mars retrograde natives tend to have more productive Mars retrograde experiences. And that's a general statement. Obviously, depending on your chart, that might change. Another thing I'll say is that if you are an Aries sun or Scorpio sun, or an Aries rising or Scorpio rising, you are ruled by Mars. And therefore, my advice would be when Mars slows down, you slow down. Honor the movement of Mars. Like, don't try to fight against the natural, like what's happening naturally. So again, your ruling planet is slowing down to stop. Like, you should probably look at, you basically follow your ruling planet. I'll also say that especially so for people who are in Mars perfection years. So if you're in a, I'm not going to explain perfections right now, but if Mars is the ruler of your year, if it's your time lord, and it will continue to be throughout this retrograde, slow down. When when September hits, like, try not to be doing the most, because yeah, I mean, if your ruler is slowing down, you should slow down, just period. And also, if you, let's see if I can do this math. Well, I will say, if Mars rules your sixth house, meaning if you have an Aries sixth house or Scorpio sixth house, also slow down. Just slow down. Honor that pause that's happening, because the sixth house is health and illness, and it's not really health, it's really illness and injury. And yeah, with what's happening in the world, you just want to be extra careful during that time. So just wanted to put that out there. The Martians, like, you know how we are, because I'm a Martian too. I'm a Scorpio sun with Mars conjunct my sun, and I'm an Aries moon. Like, I know what it's like to be a Martian, and to want to, and to, for one, just like Martians, we were like, we have the energy to do it. We kind of create these big goals, and oftentimes things that might seem unrealistic or impossible for, like, to achieve, and we do it because we're like, I can do it. Like, I have the energy. It's cool. I'm a Martian. But not when Mars is retrograde. If you're anemic, take your iron. Don't like I did, like last Mars retrograde. I wasn't taking my iron, and I toward, like, a couple months after the retrograde ended, I like got my anemia got really bad, and I was like, oh yeah, I wasn't taking my iron throughout that whole retrograde. And guess what? I haven't been. That reminds me, I have not been taking my iron, so I gotta get back on that. But yeah, those are my Mars retrograde warnings, because what happens is when Mars rules our energy and our will and our drive, our ability to, like, get stuff done, and it's going to be ramped up the whole time it's in Aries. Like, I think a lot of us are going to be like, cool, I have energy, I just want to do it, I want to fight. Also, this Mars in Aries is going to be a lot about, like, what are you actually fighting for. But I think once it starts to slow down, we really have to honor that, and we have to just, like, let the pause happen, because it's going to be squaring Saturn. And so that's not just Mars slowing down, it's Mars slowing down into a brick wall, basically, and really being immobile in a lot of different ways, and feeling really restricted. So again, just like honoring what comes up during that time, honoring those restrictions, and knowing that Saturn has its own agenda, and wants things to, like, stay within Saturn's agenda oftentimes has to do with timing. So one, wanting to make sure you're honoring your boundaries. Two, wanting to make sure you're honoring your commitments and like the goals that you have set out for yourself for the past couple years. Three, like, holding you accountable. Like, Saturn is like, you said you were going to do this. You better do it. Yeah, there's the accountability factor, and then the responsibility factor. So knowing that there's that part of your life, wherever Capricorn is in your chart, that you still have to remain accountable and responsible in that area of your life, especially this year, but especially in the fall. And then just knowing that there's also going to be this other part of you in the Aries part of your chart that is going to be extremely frustrated about about those responsibilities in the Capricorn part of your chart. And there's going to be tension there. There's going to be a lot of tension. And it's just going to be really important for you to figure out how to hold space for both of those things, and then also know that with a square, with that tension, something has to give. There, what squares do is they force us into action. They make it so that we like have to take action on something, and it's like, who wins in this scenario? Hard to say. I think in the end it's Saturn. Saturn's in the superior position, meaning like Capricorn comes before Aries on the zodiacal wheel. So Saturn is still in the superior position. So just keeping that in mind. Like the Aries stuff is a little bit more non-permanent. It's not as permanent as this Capricorn stuff. And I mean, they're both obviously going to leave those signs eventually, but it's just important to keep in mind that like there's going to be that tension there, and it's not letting up until like late November, December. So all of the fall is gonna be categorized by that. And then of course, what's happening in the world during that time, the election's gonna be taking place. Honestly, who knows who knows what's gonna happen this fall? Especially, well, no, I'm not going to get into the candidates on either side or the presumptive nominee, but I will just say that that tension will be felt more than just internally. Like you'll feel it all around you. You have both malefics, Mars and Saturn, in their own signs, squaring each other for months. And no help from no help from the benefics, no help from Jupiter. Jupiter is in its fall, not able to help much. No help from Venus, because Venus will be in its fall, and then when it finally does reach domicile in Libra, it's going to be opposing Mars and squaring Saturn. So again, not able to help much. And this isn't to say that like the whole year is going to suck and the fall especially is like everyone's doomed. I'm not saying that at all. I just think that it's important to realize that like these are unprecedented times, obviously, but like this year is just a lot. It's just a lot. And it's just something that we have to get through together. And again, like I'm going to keep talking about Cancer and like the care, the antidote is care and nurturance, but especially this summer when we have planets in Cancer, listen to what they're telling you about what you need to take care of yourself, because you're going to need to carry that into the fall and continue to uphold those practices and like everything that's coming up now, but especially this summer with those Cancer moons and Venus and Mercury moving through there, the Mercury retrograde, like pay attention to what Cancer wants you to nourish. And yeah, because it's going to be dry this fall. The energy is very dry. It's not moist. It's hot and it's dry. So yeah, and then so that's kind of the fall. I just, yeah, be prepared for the fall. And by be prepared, again, I just mean like make sure you know what you need to take care of yourself, both physically and mentally and spiritually and all the things. Kind of like what you wished you knew before the pandemic started, that type of stuff. Yeah. And all the stuff that you're cultivating now too during this pandemic. And then yeah, October, November, not great. Election 2020, and then December happens, and like I said, that's really I'm kind of just like picturing getting to like a summit on a mountain, or like maybe even the peak, and just being able to just sit down and take a deep breath and just a moment to appreciate getting through 2020 and getting through all that all that happened in Capricorn over the past couple years, and really looking at the ways to move forward more consciously, with more care and with more awareness of the ways that we need to work together. Like, we need to work together, especially with this Aquarius energy. And again, it's like, so what groups are you gonna be a part of that um, that can contribute to a more collaborative, a more community-based structures? Because that's what Saturn and Aquarius over the next couple of years, which it's going to be squaring Uranus. So Saturn and Uranus are squaring all throughout 2021. So there is still this like need to build these structures, but Saturn and Aquarius is like, okay, who's your crew that you're gonna, like, how are you, what's the community building? Because that's what Saturn and Aquarius is all about, like building these communities. Because let's be honest, like it's pretty obvious that the way things are going on now, like, cannot continue to go on. And it's not just about like whether or not you want it to or not, because I think most of us don't want things to continue the way that they are, but a lot of people do, obviously. But I think it's just inevitable that change is happening. And so who are your people? And if you don't know who those people are, like, how can you find them? What do you have to offer to the group? And especially those of us with Saturn and Aquarius, like, how can we build those structures? How can we be a part of building those structures and those communities? We are really the ones that we're really the ones that have to do it. Like, not all of us, but the ideas that help advance humanity forward is very much like a Saturn and Aquarius thing. So yeah, let's get to December. I mean, we're gonna do it. Where are we? We're in May. We're 5 months in. We have 7 months to go. We're almost halfway there, and I think it's just really important for us to keep in mind that, like, this Aquarius energy that we're moving into is about community, and it's about, again, like, the betterment, like changing these systems so that they can benefit all of us, because at this point that's not how it is, and we really we need to figure out how to do that. And I think that's what Saturn and Aquarius is going to be about. That's what 2021 is going to be about. Yeah, I'm not paying attention to the chat, but at this point it's been a very long time, 2.5 hours. Can't believe you guys are still here with me. I'm going to open it up to questions. And yeah, I'm looking at the chat now. So if you have a question, pop it in the chat, and I will see it, and I can unmute you or whatever, or you can unmute yourself once I call on you, so we can talk about it. Let's see. No, I don't think you can do raising hands, right? If there's a hand raising feature, use it, but I don't think you can. I think you have to be like Mars ruled parts of our charts with me and Scorpio. Yes, Cart. Yes, exactly that. So do you mind if I use your chart as like, just, I know your rising sign is? Okay, so Carly is a Virgo rising. So Mars rules your 8th house and your 3rd house, which, like, yeah, those are my Venus ruled houses. Interesting. Yeah, what are you guys most excited about this year? I will say, okay, cool. You can raise your hand and you click into participants. Awesome. Yeah. If you click participants, apparently you can raise your hand under, I don't know. Well, whatever. I'll just say I'm excited about, what am I excited about? I'm You know, what I will say is that I I said this before, but, like, I've been talking to astrologers more during this whole pandemic more than ever, um, and I've just, like, garnered these amazing friendships with these, like, awesome people that I normally would probably only see once a year at a conference. And we'd have, like, 5 nights of not sleeping and hanging out and drinking and whatever. And then maybe we'd talk on Twitter and maybe a little bit here and there personally. But like I've been up all night with these people on house party, just like talking till like 5 a.m., 6 a.m. sometimes. And really getting to know these people that live all around the country and world, um, more than ever before and more than I probably would have otherwise. And so I think just that and just the ability to like connect with people like in this way, because it's really our only option. I think there's something really beautiful about that. And like I just keep thinking about how it's the internet Saturn return and how like we're relying on it more than ever. And there's this whole like Saturn and Aquarius making connections, finding your people, finding your people. Um, what does anyone else want to say what they're excited about this year? You can unmute yourself and talk if you want. No pressure.
I'll go.
You go, Car.
Um, yeah, I mean, like, I definitely think that I'm a Saturn and Aquarius person. And I've just been trying to, like, I guess, tell people, even though I'm like super stressed out right now by all of this, like, I've just really been trying to kind of like keep my circle like calmed a little bit. I mean, there's only so much I can do to control people, which my Virgo and Rising like has. I mean, my Virgo,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, just like having the understanding of like we all need to slow down right now and being able to like share that with people, and like share that this is a year for a lot of us to just kind of like ponder feels
Mm-hmm.
like, yeah, like it's gonna be a hard lesson for everyone, but it's nice to know that and be able to like share that energy.
Yeah, that's that sounds about right, especially like being a Saturn and Aquarius person and knowing that like it's kind of like your duty, like your responsibility to step up for your community. And yeah, how this like this little time in the spring is really a preview of how we're going to have to be stepping up, in general over the next couple of years as we move through our returns. But yeah, thank you for sharing that. It's important. Um,
If you want another one.
yeah.
I'm Carrie. I live in
Carrie.
Los Angeles. I just moved here. That's why it's still sunny. But let's see. So I'm 33. So I'm through my Saturn return, still living in the aftermath. But this year, my partner and I actually had COVID. We got it like the first week of lockdowns. So, and it was maddening actually, because it was like before there was clarity around what it was to have COVID. And so everybody was kind of like half gaslighting us, but like it was a very confusing time. So we were sick for a full month. And that had a lot of the same elements you talked about with like sixth house and like the moon needing to nourish your body. Like those themes came up a lot for me. I'm a Mars sixth house in Aries. But so we were sick for all of March. And then in April, it was like absorbing what was going on. And we've actually decided and are in the process of building and planting a victory garden, like a full on, like we've I actually like created an Excel spreadsheet to calculate how much we need to yield on like a crop. We live in an apartment in West Hollywood, okay? So this is like logistically challenging, but this is a very Mars thing, right? So, but we like bought the seeds, but like we're doing it because of food insecurity, because like when we were sick for all of March, like we were so reliant on delivery services because we just weren't prepared for all of it, you know, with being sick on top of that. So, but I feel like planting a garden very much falls in the category of like nourishing, like taking care of yourself, like meeting your own needs. We also want to start like figuring out a way to teach other people to do it. I'm an Aquarius, or Aquarius sun, sorry. But yeah, so those have been like big themes for us. And then other things that you talked about, like the Mars retrograde, I think is going to be really hard for me because my Saturn return, like, I mean, it fucked up my life to like a degree that is hilarious. It's cosmically hilarious. But I haven't worked for a while, and I was really looking forward. This is like a 10th house perfection year for me, and I was looking forward to getting back to work and like kicking ass and like getting back on my game because it's a big part of my personality. And I feel like this retrograde is really gonna fuck with that. Sorry, excuse my language, but
It's totally okay.
yeah, so lots of questions there. And I'm a Venus in Capricorn, which is a whole other thing that's confusing with all of these transits. But yeah, so I feel like the election's going to be a nightmare. My brother works in politics, and he thinks the election isn't actually going to happen on election day. So who knows?
Yeah.
But
I have a similar outlook about it too. It's like, it just doesn't look good. Well, thank you for sharing that. Yeah.
Like lockdown or something, I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, just to note that it sounds like you were born at night. You have the sun in like the 4th.
Sun and 4th. I have the nightest of night charts according to the last reading I had.
Yeah, that can kind of show why your Saturn return kind of wrecked you. Night chart Saturns can be a little bit more difficult, or a lot more difficult to work with than day chart Saturns. Just to put that out there. But yeah, I mean, thank you for sharing it. I feel like it makes a lot of sense that you being an Aquarius, like you want to take what you're learning and like share it with the community, share it, you know, on a wider scale too.
Yeah, so one of the interesting things that you talked about was the nodal reverse, the return when you're 28.
The reversal.
Yeah, I used to work in commercial real estate and consulting, and then I worked on Wall Street, and I hated it, but I thought I really liked it. And that's one of the things that went away during my Saturn return, like hugely exploded in a spectacular fashion. Like police were involved. It was a whole thing. Wow. It's a story, but not really, but almost. But yeah, so I feel like the nodal reversal really kicked off my Saturn return. Is that a thing? Like,
yeah. It definitely like kind of like, I like to think of it as like it pivots you into the right direction so that you're able to like start the Saturn return lessons. But yeah, that's definitely a thing. I mean, same with me. I quit advertising with my reversal. I quit my job. I handed in my 2 weeks on like a Capricorn full moon in 2018. And then my last day was a Cancer solar eclipse 2 weeks later. Yeah, and that was the first eclipse in this cycle. So that was when I left advertising. So yeah, same. Nodal reversals really like, they just like they kind of like point you in the direction that you need to pivot into. Yeah. Does anyone else have questions? Feel free to just unmute yourself and ask. Maya.
Well, first of all, thank you for spending so much time. It's been like a really rich discussion, and everything you've shared has really resonated. But I'm also Saturn and Aquarius, and Actually got laid off on the first day of my Saturn return. So it was like definitely like starting with a bang. But I work in the food industry and like food justice background. And so I feel like, especially with restaurants and farms, we're seeing like the culmination of a really long time of operating unsustainably and like at the expense of like migrant workers who now can't enter the country. So it's like, but it was like fuck to begin with. So it's interesting to see this sort of like uncovering happen. And I mean, in restaurants, like it's the same issue with wage gap and like people living paycheck to paycheck. So I think just like this idea, like I keep hearing people say like the new normal, and something in me like really reacts to it because I'm like, who's normal? Like working from home is a really like, that's a privilege. Like social distancing is a privilege. And I actually do have a lot of faith in like the Saturn and Aquarius generation and millennials in general to kind of like parse that out and almost like expand our idea of what reality is and talk about how like our reality isn't as like normative as I think even like social media will kind of paint it to be. And I've really seen that like in sort of people's the way people are talking about this, like within a couple of weeks there was so much like lashing back at just like the embedded assumptions of like what this is supposed to look like. So I think there were like you were saying before, there were so many different systems that were like bound for collapse or were like operating in a really oppressive way for like decades and decades. And if like this is what like brings people to understand like that mass incarceration is like not sustainable, then that's a good thing. But I always feel like I feel weird speaking about it when I know that people's lives are in danger. And so I never want to say like, this is a good thing. Like we need to talk about this. It's like the same as the Trump election. Like, you know, oh, it's good that this is coming to light, but at what cost? But then it's like the cumulative like cost of people not talking about it is this whole other thing. So I don't know.
Do you mind if I just say like a couple things I noticed while looking at your chart, just in regards to what you just said?
Sure. I also have a Cancer midheaven.
Yeah, so
everyone
that's
thinks
one
I'm
thing.
Cancer.
Yeah, so when you said like you lost your job, which I'm so sorry to hear that. I was just looking at, you have series, the asteroid series that we were talking about having to do with like food. And I often see it prominent in people who work in food industry or with like farming or whatever. Yours is at 28 Capricorn, so that was like right after Saturn moved over your series, which hopefully, you know, when it comes back again, it's gonna transit it again 2 more times. So hopefully that will mean something in terms of, you know, work for you or something to further developments around what happened when it first passed over. But also just like your moon is at 22 Aries, and the Saturn Pluto conjunction happened exactly square your moon, and your moon excuse me, rules your midheaven, which is like career work. So that was just like the seed really of the beginning of some changes having to do with your career and, you know, how you're looking at how you're viewed in the world, like your role, your status in that way. So I mean, there's definitely further developments with it. And yeah, I mean, just in general, like this is kind of what we do in Deep Seekers. Like we'll get more into each individual chart and look at like what's been happening, what's coming up. Would you mind, like, Carly, so I used to do Deep Seekers in person in Brooklyn, like for like a year or so every month. And Car, you've been to some. I know Ashley, you've been, I'm pretty sure. Would you mind just like if you have anything to say about Deep Seekers and like your experience with it?
Yeah, I learned so much, like, and yeah, like, it's also, it's like, I learned a lot about, I mean, like, now I can, like, oh my God, this sounds so infomercially. Like, now, people can ask me, like, what's going on astrologically or in their chart, and I can, like, figure it out. And Kirah, like, taught, like, some very simple, like, I don't know, like, just methods that, like, I can be like, okay, so what's your rising? Okay, so this Mercury retrograde is going to be in your whatever house. And at the same time, it's, like, very, like, emotionally fulfilling, because we're all bonding over, like, we're all like, we're all under the same sky, but, like, we really are. And so we're all, the way that we've all been able to be like what? Yeah. But yeah, it's like, it all affects us together, and then also, like, very personally. But I think it showed, like, that there's a lot less isolation in a lot of the ways that these planets can, like, these transits and stuff can impact you. And yeah, so it's, like, also personal as much as you want it to be.
Thanks, Car. Ash, do you have anything?
I say ditto. I say that it started a journey of learning, and I'm still so at the beginning, because life gets in the way of that sometimes, and you don't have the time to sit down and really take it in. But doing these things like this webinar and Deep Seekers, and anytime I speak with you, Shakirah, I feel like is helpful for my growth in a lot of ways, and brings to light things that I wish I knew before this moment. But it's helpful, and it's empowering in a lot of ways, and it makes me just want to keep learning more. And I feel almost overwhelmed by the amount of information that we spoke about today. And I just want to dive deeper into a lot of things. Deep Seekers.
Hey. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I've taken so much of you guys' time, and I just super appreciate you all being here, and doing this with me. Is my first webinar like this. I will be doing more. I'm gonna, like, I kind of have this plan of doing a bunch of, maybe not a bunch, but doing, like, sliding scale webinars like this over the next couple months. I just have stuff I want to share and talk about. I think I'm going to do one called How to Survive Your 20s sometime in June, sometime next month, which I've been wanting to do for quite some time. But I'll go through every single year of your 20s and talk about, like, what happens, like the planetary cycles that occur those years, and hopefully make sense of what's happened in the past for some of you and what's coming up. But in terms of this, like, thank you so much for being here. Our first Deep Seekers meeting starts tomorrow. If you want to join, if you're interested, it's $10 a month. We meet twice a month. You get a lot of access to me it's like my lowest cost offering, basically. But you do get quite a bit of, like, personal, one-on-one. It's not really one-on-one, but it's in a group setting, but it's smaller than this, so we can actually get into your charts and talk. And like Carly said, it's really just lovely. Everyone can hold space for each other, and we'll pull cards, and it's very informal and fun, and just I'm really looking forward to starting them back up again. So you can do that you can go on my website. I'm going to send an email with the link to the recording of this, and I'll have sign up information there. But it's basically just on Patreon/the Strology, and figuring out how to find, like, a way to, like, talk in, like, a forum, likely Facebook group. I don't on Facebook a lot, so I'm still trying to figure that out, but that will come. And besides that, my books are open if you want to schedule a reading. I'm going to send out a code for 10% off any reading with me. I do sliding scale readings for God, the acronym Black, Indigenous, basically people of color who identify as queer in any way. Or if you need sliding scale rate, just email me. It's not a big deal. I just want to be able to serve you guys in the best way possible. I do birthday readings, and I also I have a new offering called like a astrology student reading. So it's basically like a reading, but it's more about like me kind of explaining the astrology of your chart, and less so like this is what's coming up for you, and like it's way more like astro tutoring almost, but through the lens of your chart. And so that's available on my website, astrology.com. And yeah, I mean, the other thing I'll say is just that I'm working on a beginner's course. So hopefully by the end of the year, I'll have a course ready too, and that will provide a really good, foundation to your astro knowledge. And yeah, that will be self-paced with like the option to have tutoring with me as well. So I think that's it. I just want to thank Drew for helping me just like manage the chat, making sure nothing crazy is happening. And yeah, all my friends, all my astro friends who joined along, and just everyone, thank you so much. I can't wait to do this with you again. Definitely we'll have another free webinar at some point as soon as I think of a topic. And yeah, I'll talk to you guys later. Thank you so much. Bye. I'm gonna stop the recording.